Hello all, this is your Nimmy and today we'll move on to grade 10 textbook The Sermon at Benares. This is a chapter from the textbook The First Life. So as you know, one of the major ingredient of the chapter is the title. So title is The Sermon at Benares. So let's divide the chapter name into two. Sermon Benares. Sermon, you might be very familiar with what is sermon. Sermon is basically like, a speech or maybe you can say a kind of oration, etc. Benares is a place in Uttar Pradesh. Their speciality of the place called Benares. Do you know what it is? Earlier days, the place Benares or Varanasi was called as Kashi as well from Uttar Pradesh. And people strongly believe that if you go there during the time of death, you will attain the moksha or salvation, etc. So people strongly believed in that. So from here, what you can understand from the title is the sermon at Benares, the speech given at the place called Benares in UP. And who gave the speech? The speech was given by the Buddha, the Gautama Buddha. So this is the title of the chapter, the sermon at Benares. So now we'll move on to the line by line and understand what is the writer over here trying to speak about. The sermon at Benares is written by Betty Renshaw. The specialty of Betty Renshaw was she was just a normal person and she taught in a preschool level. But one thing was she was quite religious and she often encouraged people to showcase the God's love, etc. And here also it's a kind of a religious thing. It's all about Buddhism. And now we'll move on to a chapter and we'll see what is Betty here trying to speak through this particular part of the sermon at Benares. Gautama Buddha, 563 BC to 483 BC, began life as a prince named Siddhartha Gautama in northern India. At 12, he was sent away for schooling in the Hindu sacred scriptures, and 4 years later, he returned home to marry a princess. They had a son and lived for 10 years as befitted royalty. Befitted royalty means which is according to the royalty they lived. At the age of 25, the prince heretofore means before now, Shield saw the sufferings from the world. So till then, he never saw any sufferings of the world. But then what happened is, now on, as so far he was inside the palace, everything was safe and sound. But now he is away from the palace, he is out of the palace, so he saw certain things. While out hunting, chanced upon a sick person, aged man, then a funeral procession, monk begging for alms. So he saw all these four things. Okay. These sights so moved him that he at once went out into the world to seek enlightenment. Concerning the sorrows he had witnessed, he wandered for 7 years and finally sat down under a peepal tree where he vowed to stay until enlightenment came. So, what is enlightenment? Enlightenment is like, awakening. The particular prince was just like in a kind of sleeping stage. Like he never knew that there were problems around the world until he was out of the palace. So when he was out of the palace for hunting, he came to know there are people around the world with sufferings. This is the first part of the story. Enlightenment after 7 days, he renamed the tree the Bodhi tree. So we told initially itself he was sitting under the peepal tree, right? So he renamed the tree as Bodhi tree, tree of wisdom, and began to teach and to share his new understanding. At that point, he became known as the Buddha. Okay, so far it was just his name. Then he was known as the Buddha. Buddha means what? The person who was awakened or enlightenment. So this first sermon I told you is a speech at the city of Benares. So he gave his first speech in the river of Benares, the most holy of the dipping places on the river Ganges. That sermon had been preserved and is given here. It reflects the Buddha's wisdom about one inscrutable kind of suffering. So here he is going to describe about the speech which he gave over here in the river Ganga. So it's about an inscrutable pain. Inscrutable pain means a pain which cannot be understood. There are certain things which you feel, okay, this is my problem, nobody can understand. So, in the same way, a similar pain or problem or a suffering is here our great Buddha is going to share with all. So, let's see what is it. So far it was the introduction of what? Introduction of the thing. Now we'll move on to the main story or main sermon given by the Buddha. Kisa Gautami had only one son, and he died. In her grief, she carried the dead child to all her neighbors, asking them for medicine. And the people said, "She has lost her senses. The boy is dead." So Kisa Gautami this is a sermon given. There was a lady called Kisa Gautami, and her only son died. So in the grief, she couldn't, subside the pain. So she carried the son and was going to the neighbors asking everybody for the medicine and for the child to recover the dead. And all the neighbors said that she has lost the senses. At length, Kisa Gautami met a man who replied to her request. "I cannot give thee medicine for thy child." You can see these words like thee, thy, etc. Thee medicine means thee, the meaning is you. Thy child means thy, the meaning is your child. So don't make a mistake on these words. These are old English archaic words. "But I know a physician who can." And the girl said, pray tell me. It will be, "Please tell me, sir, who is it?" And the man replied, "So go to Sakya Muni, the Buddha." Kisa Gautami replied to the Buddha and cried, "Lord and Master, give me the medicine that will cure my boy." The Buddha answered, "I want a handful of mustard seed." And when the girl in her joy promised to procure it, the Buddha added, "The mustard seed must be taken from a house where no one has lost a child, husband, parent, or friend." So Kisa Gautami reaches Buddha and asks, "My son has died and I want him to come back to the life. Can you please help me?" So Sakyamuni said, "Do one thing. Go to any house and ask them for a handful of mustard. But there's only one condition. It would be from a house where nobody has died. Not even a cousin, a child, husband, parent, or even a friend." So Kisa Gautami thought, okay, that would be a pretty easy thing. And Kisa Gautami went from house to house. And the people pitied her and said, "Here is the mustard seed, you can take it." But when she asked, did the family, son, father, mother, or die in the family, they answered yes. "Alas, the living are few, but the dead are many. Do not remind us of a deepest grief." And there was no house, but some beloved one had died in it. So, from this small activity given by the Sakyamuni to Kisa Gautami had the realization of whatever she said was a mistake. This is what has been said in this part of the story. Kisa Gautami became weary and hopeless and sat down at the wayside watching the lights of the city as they flickered up and were extinguished again. At last, the darkness of the night reigned everywhere, and she considered the fate of men and that their lives flicker up and are extinguished again. And she thought to herself, "How selfish am I in my grief? Death is common to all." So here you can understand that this is the realization of Kisa Gautami, where Kisa Gautami was hopeless and didn't know what to do. What she saw was lights of the city, and she saw the lights flickering, okay, and then extinguished. It's gone forever. So then she was able to relate it to the human being's life, where our fate is also the same. We flicker up and then we are extinguished. It's the end. And then she understood that death is a common thing to all. Yet in this valley of desolation, there is a path that leads him to immortality, who has surrendered all selfishness. We all will reach. Mortal people are people who will die. Immortality without death. So if we surrender our selfishness, we all will go to immortality, that is to God. So that realization of death is common to all. Who comes the knowledge of it? Kisa Gautami gets the knowledge of it, of this small activity. The Buddha said, so now it's the Buddha's teaching. The life of mortals in this world is troubled and brief and combined with pain. So every mortal, everybody has a problem. And that problem is a combination of pain itself. Okay, so that's what Buddha says. Now we'll move on to the next part and we'll see what is the continuation of this. For there is not any means by which those that have been born can avoid dying. If you're born to earth, we'll surely die. After reaching old age, there is death. Of such a nature are living beings. As ripe fruits are early in danger of falling. Just imagine about the fruits. When it's really ripe, what will happen? It cannot stay there, it will fall. That's a death. So mortals who are born are always in the danger of death. And for to show that explain it properly, Sakyamuni does one thing. Sakyamuni compares it with the earthen vessels. So two things. One is the ripe fruits, and second thing is the earthen vessels. Earthen vessels are made by the potter. Okay. However well the potter has made, in the end, what happened? It will break. Both young and adult, both those who are fools and those who are very wise, all fall into the power of death. All are subject to death. So that realization where he says that everybody will die, whether you're rich or whether you're poor, whether you're a fool, whether you're wise, whoever you are, you all will die. Of those who overcome by death depart from life. A father cannot save his son, nor kinsmen their relation. Mark. While relatives are looking on and lamenting deeply, one by one mortals are carried off, like an ox that is led to the slaughter. So here they're speaking about one by one in our relations will die. Okay, we might be feeling sad, lamenting, we'll be crying about that, but then by the time another person will die. So the world is afflicted with death and decay. The world, it is there. Okay, it's affected with what? Death and decay. Therefore, those who are wise people will do not grieve, knowing the terms of the world. Those who are wise know what will happen. This is a must. They will not grieve. They will not cry. So who will cry? Only the fools will cry. So here the people, here Buddha is trying to say, be wise and simply don't waste your time crying on the death of others. In the last part, here you can see it's like a conclusion of the whole story. Not from weeping, not from grieving will anyone obtain peace of mind. On the contrary, his pain will be the greater and his body will suffer. So when you cry, imagine someone is dead right in front of you, you are going on crying. So what happened? It will be very difficult for the body. It's suffering for the body. Okay. Why? Because the soul should leave the body and go to the God. He will make himself sick and pale. Yet the dead are not saved by lament. You are crying and crying and crying. Do you think the dead people will come back to life? No, they won't. He who seeks peace should draw out the arrow of lamentation and complain and grieve. So if you think you need peace, you have to arrow or draw out the arrow. You've seen the arrow and the bow, right? So you have to arrow out and let the arrow of lamentation, complain, grief, cry, everything, let all go out. He who has drawn out the arrow and has become composed will obtain peace of mind. He who has overcome all sorrow will become free from sorrow and be blessed. So, if you want to have mental peace, if you want to obtain peace, then what are we supposed to do? Free from sorrow, then draw out the arrow of fear, lamentation, complaint, grief, etc. If everything is being thrown out, you'll have peace of mind, you'll have be free from sorrow, and you'll be blessed. This is what Betty Renshaw is trying to speak through the Buddha's teaching. So this is actually the summary of the chapter, the sermon at Benares. Now we'll move on to the important questions of the chapter. Now we will move on to the important questions. Kisa compared human life to an inanimate object. What is it and why does she do so? Kisa was sitting there and saw the city light, and she says that flickering and that extinguished part she compares to human life. We also at a point of will move on to the old age and die. And for this she says that death is common to all. This is what she is trying to say through this part of the thing. Where and when did Siddhartha become Buddha? Siddhartha saw the sufferings around the world and she sat under the and Siddhartha saw all the problems, and then that is the monk who is asking for alms, and then the funeral processions, old age person. Then Siddhartha thought of getting the enlightenment and sat under the people tree. Okay, after sitting there under 7 days, Siddhartha Gautama got the enlightenment. Question number 3. Which people are referred to as wise by the people in his sermons? Buddha is referring to the wise people as those people who do not grieve because they know the earth's process, the nature's process. So they won't grieve for a person's death. They understand it. Why was Kisa Gautami sad? Kisa Gautami was sad because her only son died. Why was Gautama known as the Buddha? Gautama was known as the Buddha because he sat under the people tree and he got the enlightenment. That's the reason he was known as the Buddha. I hope all the questions are clear to you and I hope the answers are also clear to you. If you have any doubts, please don't forget to leave a message in the comment section. I'll be surely responding to all your doubts. So if you're watching my channel for the very first time, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like the video and share it to all your friends. Let it be useful for everybody. Thank you and have a good day. And please don't forget to comment the session which is the next chapter you would like to take in grade 10 and 12. Thank you and have a good day.